I'd like to ask a quick question if I could. I'll raise my hand.
If a fire truck were to show up.
If someone is to come
Go ahead.
show up
Thank you.
late, are they going to find this Zoom if they show up late now? Will they be able to find it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
The hydrant is essentially opposite the entrance.
Just a little bit off to the
So,
side.
which in effect means you have 30 feet.
No, because I don't have a video, but I do have a slide of it.
Okay, that's perfect. Let's
If
get
we
the
can
slide.
if we can get the slide back up.
So
What's the length of one part?
It's the width of a car.
Oh, yeah,
Because they're backing in. It's not the full length of a car.
Yeah, okay, it's small.
yeah, right now, how much on either side of the existing hydrant is not permitted?
As you'll see, when we took the photographs, there were people parking in front of the hydrant, so,
But legally?
but no, of course not.
Well, okay. Illegal, you know.
All right,
illegal
Mark,
parking.
we're probably ready to go. I see the majority of people, in fact, all of them but two have rejoined, and I'm sure they'll be on their way. So I'm gonna go ahead. I still think that me sharing the screen might cause problems. We'll give it another try, but give it a try.
Or
Well, I think anyone here that's in the office was my thought, but I think it'll cause us more trouble when we try to do the video later. But let's just try it now, and we'll see where we get.
Okay. We're trying to.
Should be enough.
It is fine.
Doug will be here before. So that's
Okay. All right. So, oh, my battery is running low. Is there a plug? Yeah. So, all right. So, if you would see, if you look at this slide here, you see Kathy standing in front of the ramp that comes down from the main entrance of the building. If you go to the next slide, please.
It looks just like.
Okay. So if you look down the way here, you see the fire hydrant we're talking about. It's a little bit of a distance. I'm standing.
Oh, I see it. Wait.
I'm standing right where that ramp lets out. So you would have to walk a little bit with your walker or your wheelchair, but you see the hydrant down the way on the other side of the tree pit.
Right.
Thank you for enlarging. And if you go to the next slide. Okay, now we're on 100th Street. And this is the parallel condition that Kathy was talking about. And they've actually striped the area between the no parking, the no standing zones. If you go to the next slide. Okay. So this is now why we're doing this. But that zone that had the striping is the hydrant plus the no standing zone. It may be a little bigger than we're proposing because I don't think you need all the space that they've got. But I think what we're talking about is 2 parking spaces in order to expand the hydrant zone big enough to pull in an accessorized vehicle, which would be the biggest vehicle we would contemplate for the mobility challenge folks. Now, in terms of advocacy here, or in terms of why it is that I chose to work with Kathy and to bring this to your attention, is that this strikes me as very different than a lot of the personal loading zones that we've seen around this table or around this virtual table. Starting with, Kathy has already identified 20, or Kathy's neighbors have self-identified 20 folks who are mobility challenged. This is Park West Village, and forgive me for saying that it's not a NORC, but it is a place where people are aging in place. And
Where aren't they aging in place? When you think about it.
there are times in which I sit in this chair and I think I'm aging in place. That's right.
But that next bullet is really, really important, which is this block, similar to 100, has angled parking. So it has more parking than a normal block. So to remove a space or two is not the end of the world.
Yeah, and it is also a wide street, so there's plenty of room for an accessorized vehicle even to get halfway into this zone and not block traffic going west from there. So as I think we've already now drilled in, it's added to an existing no standing zone for the hydrant. So the hydrant in effect does a lot of the work for us. We mentioned that there was a curb cut, but that's been removed for very good reasons by DOT. And this is different than ones we saw in October and in November, where the folks were asking for curb access, essentially either to chase construction vehicles away or to move a bus stop or other reasons that are not the same as what we're talking about here. So that is the proposal to you. I have drafted a resolution because generally speaking, that's what I thought we should do. And I'll open up to questions and comments now. And we'll just maybe go around the room and also include we'll go around the room, in the room, and then onto the screen. So Jay, go ahead.
Mark, you mentioned that the curb cut is removed like for good reasons.
Yep.
What are those reasons?
The reasons are that a curb cut ordinarily has to correspond with a crosswalk or a traffic signal. Colleen, correct me if I'm wrong. And there is no traffic signal or crosswalk in the middle of this block. So the concern is that a person who is vision impaired with their cane, their feeler cane, would feel the curb cut and think that it's safe to walk across the street, when in fact, of course, it's not. This is a street that Andrew, prior to my even joining this committee, worked very hard to time the lights at the other end of the block so that there's no incentive to speed to get to it to make the
We've
light.
done that in several places.
Yeah,
And I assume there are now with every crosswalk, there are curb cuts.
at the corners.
At the corner, which is.
There either is or there will be. There's an ongoing project with that.
Yeah, I just want to get the physical.
Yep, you got it.
And
And it's a long block.
Yeah, but the entrance is 50 feet,
Yep,
so.
that sounds right.
The one bad thing from what we've just heard is that you saw, or the picture shows, not the picture, but you've seen, Kathy, and I think you mentioned that the people park in the hydrant zone and leave their vehicles. That is
Well,
not good.
I mean, that's.
That's not going to affect this, but we don't want that. to
Okay, let's get back to
Wait,
our.
say that again.
Fire in that building.
A couple of years ago, I think.
But there's no striping on the street. And we wish there would be in the fire department, which is there would be at the hydrants.
Well, that's a different issue. I
We'll
agree
try to
with you.
get
There should be.
But that could be part of, hopefully that will be part of the treatment we create.
That's what we're hoping.
Let's keep going around. Jamie, do you have anything for us on this?
I do. So I have a question.
Please.
So forgive me, I'm new, I'm learning, but I'm a quick study. So I'm so excited about transportation.
Glad to have you.
Okay, so the next step would then be after the resolution. Would you have to go to DOT to ask? Yes, that's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm.
No, the process is
DOT
correct.
But DOT did approve it if we had concurrence from Community Board
Oh,
Seven.
great. Oh, really?
And the Commissioner, Pinkar and Colleen, I believe, was part of it as well.
And so-
They said in fact, they're the ones who suggested that they broach.
Okay, well, that's a detail I didn't know, but I'm glad to
My
learn.
question
Okay.
is good then.
Colleen,
Very good.
just confirm.
Colleen, are you with us? We lost Colleen. Okay.
Thank you for
She's
that.
here. I promoted her. She declined. I'll give it another. I'll try it
We're
again.
nudging. Let's go on. Jamie, do you have anything else?
I do.
Here she comes.
I just want to know, so I live across from the Atrium. And there was a big battle, you may all know because you're on the committee, over the 45-foot no standing zone in front of the Atrium. I'm actually in favor of fewer cars and more no standing zones myself. But they did have to back away from the 24-hour no standing to a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. no standing because of community response to their 24-hour. There was a lawsuit and everything. So I just want to put that on the table in case you come into that kind of situation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ken?
First question, how many units need?
Hey, it's Colleen. I'm here. I had to reconnect back.
Thanks, Colleen.
About 400 units.
400 units.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I proposed a long time ago that we should have a threshold for, beyond the certain building size, which we should automatically approve these things. 400 units is, I think that's a.
Wherever the line is.
I'm
for
more
it,
than
yeah, for it,
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
okay. I mean, we need no other reason to support this. That's it. I regularly cross the corner Just as long as Colleen's here and Patty's here, I just wanted to note, our board passed a resolution calling on the DOT to put in where possible, protected left turns, which means that a car cannot legally make a left turn while a pedestrian has a walk zone. So for instance, if I'm crossing 97th Street in Central Park West on your side of the street, cars would not be able to turn into. They would have
They have to wait for a special left turn.
They'd have to wait for a green arrow. So I crossed there a lot, and at night it's really, really scary. I basically run, so you know, to just to make sure I get across the street. So I just wanted to put a pin in. That would be an ideal place, Colin, to put in a protected left turn.
Okay.
Which is not this issue.
Which is not this
It's not
issue,
this issue.
but it does highlight the issue that Kathy raised, which is that the alternative to this curb cut is to force people to go to one corner or the other, and I think that's what
Yes.
Ken is addressing. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Ken. Anything else?
Nope.
All right.
Who's chasing you, Ken, that you're always running at that?
The car's turning left.
All right. Andrew.
No, I'm very supportive of this. The one thing I would just say, it kind of goes back to last meeting, is this one seems to be a no-brainer, but my understanding was kind of historically when anytime someone would come to the board for this, it was basically just a no, just like you approve it for one building, how do we not approve it for another building?
We do it on a case by case.
Case by case, but so, and I think there's some kind of backstory there. So I would love at another point, maybe just have a discussion of what are the parameters, number of units in a building. So when other people come in, it doesn't seem as obvious as a need in this situation. We have some metric to use to inform our resolution.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to get into that now, but some
Yeah,
of
no,
the, some of the
no,
applications
I know.
have had other really onerous issues associated with them.
And the resolution that I drafted, the last, in effect, whereas clause says that this curb access area is distinguishable from residential loading zones requested in this district because it fronts an extra wide street with greater than usual parking, and because of the numerous residents of 372 who self-identify as mobility challenged. So that's my effort to say this night is not unlike all other.
And this already exists on the other side of Park West Village.
Howard?
I think I see it exactly the opposite of everyone in this room. I don't know why the assumption is there would be car storage and you have to have a compelling justification to not have car storage. I think safety should be the default. And then if you can safely put in car storage, then yes, you put it in. So I see it exactly the opposite. I think safety should take priority over car storage, and I applaud you for coming here tonight.
Okay. So
There's two hands up on screen.
So let's go. I see, we'll go to the public in a second, but I'm gonna call on Alex first because we're going around the committee first. Alex, you got anything?
Hand is down.
No, it's good. Everyone said it already. I'm super supportive. This is fantastic. Thanks for doing it, Mark.
Well, thank Kathy. And I see a hand. Is that Janet? I'm sorry, I can't read very.
Janet Schroeder.
All
I
right,
see
Janet.
Janet Schroeder.
I did not mean to raise my hand. I'm sorry if it raised. I apologize, everyone.
Very good. Okay, Max, can you pull up the resolution at this point?
I may
Or should I
be
start?
able to, I may not be able to. Let's see. Where does it live right now?
You know what? I'm gonna try to sign in.
You need a charger.
Because I checked the drive, it's not in the drive.
I need a plug. All right, give me 1 second. Is this a webinar or a meeting? This is a webinar, right?
Yeah, that's right. I see full board agenda, full board updated message. Oh, is this it? No.
All right, give me 1 second.
Since 1950.
Yes. Yes, we'll see. I got it, thanks.
Yeah,
Um,
I got it.
okay, got it. Got it. I'm not the host. Audio, mute.
Recording in progress.
That. And that. Okay, so now I share my screen. And invite them up this guy, right? And there it is. Okay. Well, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Um, yeah, good. Maybe, make it a little bigger.
Yeah.
So basically it recites the whereases recite what we just talked about. And then the therefore reads, that community board 7 calls on DOT to create a no standing zone to extend the area adjacent to the fire hydrant in front of 372 Center Park by a sufficient length to permit an accessory ride or similar vehicle to reach the curb. So we're not actually prescribing a set number of parking spaces. We're asking DOT to do the minimum necessary to accommodate the issue that we're bringing to your.
Are we extending the area of the fire hydrant both east and west?
I would leave that to DOT.
Okay, because it doesn't say which way we're extending.
Yeah, I would, personally, I would extend only on one side, but do it, yeah.
Are we suggesting
But I would, the resolution is open enough
Okay.
that it could,
we'll let the.
it would get to let DOT figure out the right way to do it. That's the resolution. We've all spoken. If there's anything else to talk about, please raise your hand now. Otherwise, I think we're calling the question. All those in favor of the resolution that we just talked about? I see, go ahead.
And I'm sure.
All right, I'm gonna
stand
take-
this up, so that would be.
Alex, is your hand up? Where is?
He may have stepped away for a sec.
All right, so we got 7.
Yeah, 7.
Hands are down. Oh, God, I'm now on video, weren't I? I should not do that. Sorry about that. Okay, all opposed? I don't see any hands. Anybody abstaining? We have 1 abstention. And is anybody ineligible to vote? So the motion carries 7-0 to 1-0. And I thank you, and I thank Kathy for bringing it to our attention. I think this is a
I thank all of you. It's really a safety issue, as you said. It's a very important one.
Very
Thank you
good.
so much.
Thank you for coming.
okay. Next up is Ken's resolution. Ken, why don't you, why don't I just give you the floor and you tell me, yeah, thank you. Actually, I think I might have it
You have it, yeah.
in my, but Ken,
Did you distribute to everybody or?
Everybody
did, okay,
should have a
fabulous.
Physical copy.
So
of
tell us a
something.
little bit about it, why don't you?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Good. Um,
Oh, just
So this is my attempt to address some of the prestige, some of the perception of chaos in the streets. It's in my opinion that this is a big part of it, which is illegal mopeds, the sense of lawlessness in the streets. And the way they are being ridden, have been ridden. I actually think things have gotten a little bit better with them over the last couple of months. But over the summer it was particularly bad because when I conceived this. And they've been responsible for 1 death in our district and 1 disabling of a cellist that played in Lincoln Senate. So basically the problem is that we have basically 3 problems. We have, in some cases, we have unregistered dealers who are selling mopeds. Oh, by the way, but just the semantics. Alex called this to my attention, but moped, strictly speaking, means motor pedal. It's short for motor pedal, so it's one of those things that are more popular in the 70s. But the motorized pedal thing, so they're sort of like these e-bikes.
There's no references there in the VNT law. There's no definition of moped.
Not that I didn't look, but I don't think so. There is a definition of what these are, which are limited use motorcycles.
Right, but not moped.
I didn't see it, but
So, I mean,
the DMV actually has a page where they explain how to register one of these things. And the headline is how to register a moped. On the
yeah, well, it's
DMV.
for convenience sake, but they're not in the law, so some of the technical references,
Right.
I think, need to be changed.
I agree. I mean, we could call them LUMs, limited use motorcycle.
Well, you should call them what the law.
Yeah.
In the,
An accurate record.
but for purposes here, I'm gonna say that that's it. So in some cases, we have unregistered dealers selling mopeds. In other cases, we have registered dealers selling mopeds without vehicle identification numbers. And either they don't have VINs because they can't have them, then it's street legal, or they just have blind. And then in other cases,
Or the buyer had decided not to register it, I guess, right?
No, he's talking about the VIN now.
The VIN,
The VIN number.
that's
before it's sold.
manufactured.
Okay.
And then we also have dealers, when you're talking about selling legal and illegal mopeds. And allowing the person to leave the dealership without registering, or without showing a driver's license. These things are treated as motor vehicles, which goes up the driver's license, as supposed to be registered. So most of what we're seeing on the streets are illegal and not registered. Don't have plates, they're operated like people with probably in the front. And there's a bill. So there are parts of this resolution that address all those things, like the unregistered dealers and the dealers who are selling mopeds without VIN numbers. And then the part about at the point of sale, allowing people to dealers to for allowing buyers to walk off the lot without having registered, having the driver's license. That's actually addressed by two bills in the state legislature, one carried by Kleiman Siegel and the other by Adolf at the east side. So my resolution supports that legislation. And that would require dealers to make sure that we can't leave the dealership without having the registered vehicle and having the license. And apparently there's been a loophole in the law of you could drive a moped through. And then the final part of the resolution calls for a ban on gas-powered mopeds. Gas-powered mopeds, they're kind of in two kinds. There's 2-stroke and 4-stroke, and they're both very polluting. But the 2-stroke are incredibly polluting, like 100 times more polluting than 4-stroke engine. Although 4-stroke engines are not blameless, they probably in a moped they release less carbon than a car just because they're smaller, but they also have a lot more volatile organic compound, hydrocarbons and such, nitroxin. So they're not great. And there are alternatives. They're electric. So if people, if we ban them, and like the version of places, the city setting, the state setting that applies to activities. So we can get out there and
If a moped is sold to somebody and there's no VIN, how do you track it? How do you even know where it was sold? What store it sold it?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Janet. EVSA. I just like to throw something out. The VIN number isn't usually the problem. The VIN number is often on the bike. Our group is the one that had that bill written. We came up with the loophole. EVSA did. We came up with the loophole and brought it to Alex Boris and Brad Hoylman. We said that mopeds are being sold, both gas and mopeds, legally. They don't have to have a license and registration at point of sale. No one kind of knew that. And so we pointed that out months ago. The bills were written as quickly as possible, and we're happy about that. We think that they will pass so that mopeds and of both kinds, all kinds, have to have a license and registration at point of sale. That's actually the wording that we also came up with. But the VIN isn't so much the problem. When bikes are confiscated by the NYPD on the street, the rider can get them back in an impound lot if they go there by just showing their bill of sale, because the VIN number is on that. So I'm sure there's some cases where they're scratched out or where there isn't a VIN, but that's really not the issue. The issue is, as you said, they are sold without a license and registration, though it's illegal to ride them without a license and registration. So hopefully this bill will pass and that loophole will be closed. And we're very proud that we at EVSA uncovered that loophole.
All right, thanks very much. Ken, is there more that you wanted to put forward here?
I don't think so.
Okay. There are two concerns I have that if I could share them with you. I meant to share this with you before, and I apologize that I haven't. I'm focusing now on the therefore clauses. In the second therefore clause, the phrase is to put out of business. And I would sort of like not to use that terminology if you don't mind. And I think that the same effect can be had if we substitute the words enforce existing laws prohibiting and then pick up dealers from selling non-street. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing that I wanted to call to your attention is that some of the legitimate dealers of these kinds of vehicles, and I know that it's a spectrum, and we can probably spend the rest of the night talking about the differences between this one and that one. But a lot of them are small storefronts who I would not like to put out of business. I would just like to have them behave better. And so I would suggest that in the third therefore clause, where you say be registered at the point of sale, which suggests that the point of sale staff is responsible for doing the registration, and they probably don't have the bandwidth to do that. I think you can accomplish the same purpose by saying that they be registered before they can be removed from the point of sale. Okay.
That's good.
So
I
that
would do it as an ego, because there are DOBs.
well, if it's registered before you, if it's registered before you can remove it, then you pick it all up. I mean, you know, the Honda dealers of this world will absolutely get you your registrations, but the moped dealers may not. So with those two things, I'm going to shut up and start calling on folks. Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on this? I see Jay.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. You saved me.
Good.
Also in, that last sentence in the second therefore paragraph is really a comment. It's really not an ask as such. It's kind of the one that says joint operations could be conducted via a task force. I mean, it just doesn't belong in a therefore. It's not asking them. It's, you know, it's your opinion. It's not. Huh?
It's a suggestion.
Yeah, if you want to put it in, it belongs in all the introductory clauses, not in the therefore. You know, it unless you want to say therefore the NYPD and the DOD should.
Well, I think sometimes in the credos. Like
Well, if you want to leave it in there, I consider it a technical. Yeah.
okay.
But it's up to you. It's your.
I mean, it just seems to me that sometimes we say, perhaps, you know, we give options. The parts department, if we could put in this kind of rhythm, that kind of thing.
It's up to you. I don't think it belongs. Going back to your introductory statements, you say that e-bikes, you reference e-bikes, although this resolution deals only with what we call mopeds, which are limited use notice. You say that e-bikes are classed as bicycles. Actually, the V&T law defines a bicycle as a human two-wheeled vehicle. And it defines e-bikes, as we refer to them, in a separate category of electrically assisted bicycles. So to say that they're classed,
I guess what I meant by classes in the eyes of the law, they're the same because
they're not the same.
they don't, but they don't. in certain respects, they're the same. They'll require, you know, the driver's license, then the right register.
Well, I'm happy to support if you want to put in that.
Yeah,
The operators.
No.
And we both, the board has already passed.
Yes.
We should call it for that registration and insurance of these things, so I can't imagine why you wouldn't support.
Because I voted against it.
That's not why, that's.
All right, well, let's.
So
combine
anyway,
ourselves with the resolution, okay?
that's a flaw, because they're not claims, e-bikes aren't class.
Hi, I'd like to add some things just because we deal with this kind of all the time. And if you'd like to, I'd love to share a few
Sorry,
things to
Calling up
fix.
folks in. So
Oh,
thanks very
okay.
much.
Okay, I raised my hand. I didn't know if you saw it.
Certainly couldn't change it from class to something else.
It's up to you, but again, it's.
I may have a solution for you, but go ahead with your next comment.
And actually,
Me?
this is the, like, the misrepresentations aren't even necessary, but you're not dealing electrically assisted. You're only dealing
Yes.
Well,
with.
I,
Yes,
I mentioned them in the preamble because there's a lot of confusion in the streets as to what various things are. I've noticed this time that when people refer to say, oh, look at that e-bike, and it's a moped. It's a moped, it's like a new bike. They're constantly being considered bikes.
Yep. Okay, Jay, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I have some, first of all, let me say, I agree that if the vehicle traffic law requires that any vehicle be registered and that the operator of any vehicle be licensed, they should be. And I think it's definitely that any vehicle that requires registration, that should be done at the point of sale, whether it's a truck or a bus or a car or a moped. So I agree with that, and I think that's all that this needs to say. Mark's language is fine because that would promote point of sale registration. So I think that the whole thing could be very much simplified. Because if that's the underlying thrust of what you're looking for, which is some assurance of registration, that's the best way to do it. Car dealers have been doing it since time immemorial. It's not the biggest deal in the world with computers. They all have access and they just.
Okay.
It's registration and the operator has a license.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's fine. I think they have to produce a valid driver's license, but the registration is, you know, it's a computer.
Yeah. Okay.
It's easy.
I want to keep us moving here. So any other comments? Other than it could be simpler. Okay, Jamie is next.
So I agree entirely that there's a tremendous amount of confusion about mopeds and e-bikes and scooters and all of that. And I found this preamble incredibly helpful, helping to clarify a distinction which I thought I understood, but I didn't until I read this. But I do wonder if you wanted to have a lot of force, you want to focus on that group of vehicles which the DOT requires to be registered. They should require, in my humble opinion, that e-bikes also be registered, but they don't. I'm looking at the website. They do require that mopeds be registered. Now, the problem is many of them are not, and that gets to the nub of what they're doing. But I wonder if it would be more powerful if the thing focused without helping people to better understand those classifications, focused on that group of vehicles, mopeds class C, B, and A, which are supposed to be registered because they go 25, 30, and 40 miles per hour.
And they weigh so much too.
And you can't ride them on the sidewalk, you can't ride them in the bike lanes, you're supposed to be with the traffic, it's a vehicle. And that's what this, to me, that's what the power of this is. Because this is a vehicle, you're supposed to register it like a car. And I have a lot of issues with the e-bikes, but DOT's telling me right here, do I need a license? No. Do I need to register it? No. Can I ride it in the bike lane? Yes. I mean, maybe we
There's
need
some
another
legislation.
resolution. Right, I know.
There is
But
legislation.
I wonder if this would be clearer and have a little more force if it were just about the mopeds without getting off in the weeds like the e-bikes distinction. That's just a question I'm putting on the table.
Happy to send you the resolution.
I know, I'm aware of
It's
I was there, I was,
2021.
yeah, no, I was there. I've been
Just
coming to
go-
these meetings even though I haven't
Okay,
been.
let's keep it
So I
moving.
just wanted to put that on the table.
Good points.
Thank you.
Oh, there's only one other language point I want to make. In
Yep.
paragraph 4, as you all say, the therefore paragraph 4, where you say any type of gas powered moped, if you might want to specific, I humbly suggest say in favor of electric.
Oh,
Just to,
Uh,
no, isn't that what he wants to say?
it may be, but I don't know that we want, well, it's your comment, so please go ahead.
It's my comment, my
Okay,
comment.
that's it.
someday-
it's
someday
unclear.
there may be hydrogen powered.
Because it's a little
Okay.
unclear what your motivation.
All right, I want to move us along because we do have another agenda item. Jay, we'll come around. So go ahead, Andrew.
I understand Ken's reasoning for, including e-bikes in the clarification, but I do think e-bikes, whether it's an e-bike, whether it's a pedal assisted e-bike, and just this conversation right now makes me believe that if we go to full board with this and it's not solely focused on these mopeds, there's going to be a much larger debate about e-bikes and all this, and I would rather just focus on the main core, so I do think we should just focus on the mopeds. I would be supportive. I mean, I think that's important, although I'm just skeptical that ultimately anything could happen with these things, like there's actual stopping people and taking them on the street. There's thousands of these in an underground market all over the place. So I'm supportive of it. I think it should be more limited, just focusing on them. And I think to get these things out of the fight, they going both ways, doing everything they're doing. More, but I do think it undermines everyone that is trying to do the right thing, that's supportive of bike lanes and everything. And it kind of hurts the argument that people point to say, see, I told you these are bad.
Got it. And Howard, anything to add?
Oh, sure, I'll repeat the line use more times than any other line in this, in the committee board. The perfect should not be the enemy of the good. This is a step in the right direction. We can't do everything. No one's even going to listen to us if we try to do everything. This is a very positive step, modest positive step in the right direction, and I'm fully supportive.
Thank you. I don't know how we're keeping attendance here. I want to make sure that Doug signs in. You did, okay.
Yeah.
So we're privileged that Doug has joined us and I'm calling on Doug.
Well, there is a lot here and I would be in favor of skinning it down, much like Andrew said. I think being simple, I'd almost be supportive of, this could actually end up being two different resolutions, right? I mean, one of the resolutions alone is supporting a Hoyleman Siegels bill. I would just say as a general comment, which I guess doesn't really pertain to one of the whereases, is that the electric mopeds and gas powered mopeds are, as dangerous, and so they should all be registered. I don't think we're saying, that, and ironically, and I'm in favor of clean energy and all that, but the e-bikes are quiet, and in some respects that's more dangerous because they can't be heard coming up the block as opposed to the motorized vehicle. I wish we could skinny this down. Mark, you mentioned some things that I was going to put out of business, I think is a term that obviously I think we've already stipulated on. Yeah, I have no further.
Okay, thanks. Andrew?
I would agree with Andrew and Doug, that the more we focus on the gas powered mopeds in this red zone and take out some other things, those are the really dangerous things. I would love to see them move to electric. I mean, the MTA is moving to all electric buses. So, I just don't see why all vehicles aren't moving to electric. It's such a smart thing to do, and both gas powered mopeds, even electric mopeds and motorcycles are required to have a license plate. And right away, that'll tell you the difference between an e-bike and those vehicles. And, those licenses and the registrations and the carrying of insurance must be enforced, and, you know, to whatever end we can make that happen. I'm all for advocating for that.
Thanks. Alex, do you have anything? Nope. Okay. Jay, one more time.
Well, again, the resolution and Doug articulated pretty well, and Andrew, what you're trying to get at here is getting these things registered, making sure that the law is complied with, that they're registered and that the operators have licenses. And that's what we should say. All of this other stuff is window dressing, but it's worse than window dressing, because the last paragraph of the therefore clause. In what world is the city and state going to ban motorized, whatever you want to call them, but since there's no definition of moped, the real definition includes motorcycle. And you're asking,
That's a separate
There's a
class.
definition of limited use motorcycle.
okay, you're
I'm
asking
gonna
them to
change
just
the
ban
resolution.
every single one in the state, not just
The
ban
city.
them, and buy them back. Do you have any sense of what that would cost the state?
Well-
We asked for a lot of things that appear on the list.
Okay. So
Well, I
that's-
think it's self-defeating. Because
I don't think
if what you're really driving at is.
I think we,
yeah.
it's up to community boards sometimes.
Okay, listen.
It's sometimes up to community boards to make bold piece of proposal.
All right.
that Nobody else is.
Thank you. So I'm going to suggest one more edit, Ken, if you, but I'm okay without it. To Jay's point about the last sentence in the second therefore clause, which does sort of read a little bit precatory. If instead it were to read, enforce existing laws prohibiting dealers from selling non-legal mopeds. And I would, instead of what's there, I would say, comma, including through, and then pick up your language, joint operations conducted by a task force involving NYPD. I would throw in DCWP and DOT. Is that acceptable to you?
Sure.
I think that's actually a little stronger.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So with that, that's the resolution that's in front of us. Janet, do you have another comment you want to make before we call the question?
Hi. No, I don't want to take, you kind of worked it all out, but I just wanted to clarify, and some of you know this and some of you might be confused, but e-bikes are in the same class as bicycles. Our group asks that they be reclassified as Class B mopeds. Why? Because they have a motor and a throttle. They aren't bicycles. They go much faster. They're a little heavier. They're much more dangerous. There have been studies that show they're about 20 times more dangerous. So the bottom line is that is e-bikes. Then you've got two kinds of mopeds, right? The e-mopeds and the gas-powered. They are both sold legally right now in stores without license and registration, as you said, and Mark Diller is correct. What we're asking for, the languaging is actually that you have to come in basically to the store with your registration and licensing, just like if you were buying a car. And then you can get your bike and ride it right out of there. But right now, they're legally being sold without any of that. So that's just the clarification on those 2 points. There are also, somebody brought up a good point. My last point is that they're also sold on the internet. They're also sold, they're also being bought by middlemen. If you read the article in the New York Times, maybe 6 weeks ago, you're seeing more licenses on mopeds now, both electric and gas, because middlemen are buying them, getting the license and registration themselves when they go in, and leasing them to deliver Ristas and commercial workers or whoever else might want them. And then taking 30% of their pay from the delivery app, which they also set up. So it's pretty horrific, all of the layers of things that are going on. We'd have to have a 1-hour conversation, but we are pleased. Yeah, we are pleased that you are in favor, I'll just say, of the gas powered, because they don't offer anything that the e-powered don't. They're heavier. They're more dangerous. If you watch our video, you'll see many crimes being committed. They go faster. And they're not great for the environment because they're gas powered. So what do they offer more than an e-moped is my question. So I agree with you all about the gas powered being, banned.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we needed agreement here. Yes,
I agree that.
Thank you so much. So with that, I think, is there another hand? No, that's the same hand. Okay. So, so I'm gonna, I think we're gonna call the question.
With your modification.
With the modifications that Ken has accepted. And so let's call the question. All those in favor of the resolution as modified? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And Alex is eligible to vote is 8. So that's 8. Those against? 1. Anybody abstaining? I think it's everybody abstaining. All right. And anybody ineligible. And then in the Department of Where Are My Manners? I haven't called on Beverly for her votes on any of the resolutions tonight, so I apologize. It's been a while since I've done this. Do you want to cast a vote on this or any other resolution tonight?
I'm not eligible to vote, sorry.
Oh,
I don't have a waiver.
This is the part where I say I knew that.
Give yourself a waiver.
There you go. Okay.
I know who you can talk to.
Beverly, you should have gone to waivers or us.
Okay. So, so those resolutions all
That's
passed.
about right.
And I thank you for bringing it, and we will make those adjustments and bring it to full board. That's where we're at, right?
That's where we're at.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to our featured speakers. We have 2 tonight, and I want to talk just a little bit about, with Andrew's indulgence, and talk a little bit about what we're gonna do and what we're not gonna do. This was brought to our committee by constituents asking us to hear first the EVSA folks and then the Streetopia Open Plans folks. And I'm delighted that both of you could be here, and I'm really delighted that you could both be here the same night. This may be an area where we have some strongly held views, and they may not all be in concert. So one thing we're going to do is talk about the issues and not about each other. That's always true in our meetings, but it's especially true when we have some really significant issues affecting us all, like these do. We're gonna, the way that we sort of, Andrew and I have sort of organized this is we're gonna ask, we're gonna call on the EVSA folks, and they can decide who among them will speak and for how long, for about 15 minutes. And I think you want us to throw a video as part of that. And then we're gonna call on Carl Mahaney, who is kindly also come to join us and has been flexible with his time so that he can follow the bouncing ball that is our Transportation Committee agenda. And then we're going to open it up for questions and comments. If there are folks from the community, I think I'm going to call on them first, and then we'll go around this table. This is not aimed at any kind of resolution at this time. This is informational and sharing and learning. Maybe somewhere down the road, there'll be a resolution that's worth having, but we've already spoken as a board on a lot of the issues that are going to come up in this conversation. So I think prudence tells us to listen and interact with one another tonight, and then think about what the next step might be after that. So are there any questions about what we're doing or not doing here?
15 minutes for each of you.
Correct. Yeah. You don't have to take all 15 minutes, but that's what we're going to do. So we thank you all for being with us. We thank the public for being with us. I can't really see how many are with us, but we thank you. And I'm going to call on EVSA first. Janet, do you want to lead off, or who is going to take your side?
I'm using most of the time. I'm the founder, along with Pam Maness of EVSA earlier this year. We do have a video, so I didn't know if we could try that first. Do you have a screen there? You can show it, and then maybe
Yes.
have somebody, I don't know if you can stream onto the, it is 7 minutes, so it will be a little
No
less than half
problem.
of 15.
That's fine. We do
So
have a
I'm
video.
I have it here. I'm gonna queue it up. If
Thank
it
you.
looks like
Thank
it's
you.
gonna be complicated midway through, I will, I'll stop it, but just give it a second.
Okay.
To load.
That's fair.
Oh, high tech.
And this is a video we put together and showed it at one of our town halls about 6 weeks ago, where we had legislators and NYPD and about 150 of our members.
Okay, so I'm going to try to make it full screen so we can all see, and I'm gonna press send.
There's sound.
Oh, yeah.
Is there sound?
Max, we don't hear audio.
Get someone that person's.
I've paused it. I'm going to try again. Someone speak up if you don't hear audio in the next about 10 seconds.
Dead now. He gets back on his bike and leaves the scene.
59-year-old woman in critical condition after police say she was hit by an e-bike going the wrong way in Manhattan. The e-bike rider just kept going.
Police say the individuals you see right there on your screen struck a 2-year-old child with a motorbike. This all played out inside Pelham Bay Park.
We lost the sound.
His 6-year-old boy is.
You guys have lost the sound.
Yeah, we
Cutting in
got
and out, yeah. Was no sound in the park, that's all.
Okay.
Lost
Really,
everyone.
you've got nothing.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it was
Okay.
all right.
So you had sound and then it.
We had
stopped.
Intermittent.
Yeah,
Alright,
the
let's try-
visual's
I
pretty,
kinda-
the visual's pretty strong, so I think if the sound does go in and out, you'll get the point.
Okay, sounds good. I'll run it again, or I'll pick it up from where it was.
Is now in critical condition. Authorities report he was hit by a moped. Park users think they're safe from vehicular traffic while inside a city park, and this is where children should be able to play and run and skip without fear of being hit.
It's like e-bikes, e-scooters, battery-powered mopeds, and other 2- and 3-wheelers are everywhere. It's not just your imagination. Land the bike lane. I see a lot of people just disregarding pedestrians and traffic laws. Across the street. As I cross the street, I'm looking for the bikes. Left to right, looking for the bikes. It's horrible. Always another bike with another bike. Out of here, bro. Actress Lisa Baines, best known for playing Ben Affleck's mother-in-law in the movie Gone Girl, was killed while crossing Amsterdam Avenue on New York's Upper West Side. A scooter ran a red light and smashed into the actress. Watch what happens to this woman as she tries to exit a bus. She's mowed down by a guy on an electric scooter. Our first stop, a woman hit by an unlicensed moped on the sidewalk of the Grand Concourse. After hitting her, the driver ditched his bike and ran so fast he forgot his shoes. Minutes later, police found the suspect in his socks.
But keep in mind that this is legal behavior. Right, not riding it, but transporting it on the subway is legal. Yeah.
Fire destroyed homes and businesses in the Fordham Heights section of the Bronx yesterday. 7 people were hurt, including 5 firefighters. The cause, authorities say, was a lithium-ion e-bike battery. Again. You've seen the pattern, a shooting in the city, a suspect on a scooter. Is that the vehicle of choice for criminals right now?
Right now, that's the #1 vehicle because it's evasive and get away quickly, and it's tough for a police car to catch up to them.
Thieves on motorbikes, not only snatching handbags, but punching women as well. It happened 6 times in a single night in a span of less than 90 minutes across 4 neighborhoods in the Bronx.
This video from June shows another moped mugging in Brooklyn. Here's another from July in Queens, and an attempted robbery on the Upper East Side in August.
Police say a man wearing a white hazmat suit and black mask came in, attempted to rob the deli, and shot a 67-year-old employee in the head, killing him before taking off on an electric scooter.
Police say 8 shots were fired at a group standing outside this building. A bullet struck that 17-year-old in the face and killed her. No word yet on a moto. She was the only one hit. And as you mentioned, police say the 2 suspects took off on a scooter.
NYPD Chief of Detectives James Essex says the suspects' scooters, which often have no plates or the wrong plates, zip by pedestrians on sidewalks.
Police believe a violent sexual predator prowling the city on his e-bike pounced on 2 innocent victims this weekend on Central Park West by 82nd Street in the heart of the Upper West Side. Surveillance video shows a 23-year-old woman being assaulted from behind. An hour later, near this corner of Avenue A and East 4th Street, a 28-year-old woman was sexually assaulted.
Brooklyn and Queens. A scooter riding killer opens fire on innocent bystanders. Here's what we know about the victims tonight. An 87-year-old man is dead, shot in the back. A 21-year-old man is recovering after being shot in the shoulder. A 44-year-old listed in critical condition, shot in the face.
Video shows that he's not targeting anybody. He's not following anybody. As he's driving on his scooter, he's randomly shooting people.
Thank you. So hopefully that was impactful. It's a very, very small amount of the crimes, the accidents, the everything going on with e-bikes, including city bikes and mopeds. I'm Janet. Thank you, Susan Simon, for setting this up so that EVSA could be represented here tonight. And I thank all of you for taking it seriously and allowing us to be here. I'm co-founder of New York City E-Vehicles Alliance, started it with Pam Maness, who is partially paralyzed now. You may have heard her story many times. Pam Maness, she was a professional cellist who cannot play anymore, was hit on the Upper West Side. I read her story and reached out to her earlier in the year and said, let's get something going because this is ridiculous. It's happening around us more and more. Her story just really touched me as well as Lisa Baines. But one thing you didn't see in the beginning of that, because I know it was wonky getting started, was Priscilla Loki, who was killed by a city bike, pedal assist city bike in September. I'm sure we've all heard this story. Her family is a member of EVSA and speaks for us and spoke for us this past week. We had a press conference in the middle of the day, freezing cold. We had 120 of our 500 members show up. And Priscilla Loki spoke, legislators spoke, a lot of press was there. Most importantly, they heard from our victims. We have over 50. It's important to note, all we want is safety for everybody. We're not selective about that. We want it for pedestrians. We want it for cyclists. We have over 50 in our group and about 12 that have been seriously injured in our group. Some spoke at our press conference as well. So we're not anti-bike, not at all. What we're anti is people that are riding with no accountability, and organizations or companies, delivery apps and city bike that take no accountability. And accountability comes in knowing there might be a consequence if you do something wrong. After all, our cars are licensed and registered for a reason. It would be so much worse if they weren't. Can you imagine people thinking, wow, I want to get somewhere fast and there's no accountability? Well, that's how it is right now for e-bikes. E-bikes don't have to be licensed. Mopeds do, but they're 90% of the time they're not. And when they're in accidents, they almost always flee. Of 50 of our victims, in one case at fault, the rider at fault, One case out of 50, the person stayed. Liz Kruger has a great bill to make stiffer penalties for e-bikes, bikes, mopeds leaving the scene of a crime. And it's great. And we love her for it. And we're all for it. How are you going to find them if they're not licensed and registered? There's really no point. That's why we support and we back Bob Holden's bill to license and register all e-vehicles. Right now, they don't have to be. We think it should be a law. It's important to note that nobody in our group is paid. We are a grassroots organization. We're not lobbyists. We don't pay anyone. They don't pay us. We are truly of the people in a democracy, and we're proud of that. Again, over 500 members and growing all the time. I told you how we started, but one thing is, again, we're not selective about safety. Any vehicle, no matter what it is, one death is too many. And we're very concerned about the vulnerable that get forgotten quite a bit. The elderly, the disabled, the blind, and the deaf. We have a blind member that spoke at our town hall this summer and said he's never been as afraid to cross the street, that he can't anymore. He can't hear e-bikes coming. They never stop. He's basically isolated at home now. We can't forget that 3.2 million people in New York State are over 65. Let's not forget that they're already a little isolated. They're older, living in a major city of 9 million people, and now they're afraid to walk out on the sidewalks. We've all heard these stories, and if we haven't, let's put ourselves in the position of these people. We're all going to be there if we're not already. 11% of New Yorkers are disabled. Our mission is based on common sense. I mentioned the opposition sometimes says, what about cars? Well, they're already licensed and registered. We started a group for an unmet need of vehicles that go very fast as well and hurt people, are heavier than bikes, and are egregiously riding. And we want them all registered, not just commercial, but also the city bikes, which do some of the most egregious. And as I said, did unfortunately kill the beloved Priscilla Loki. Our 50 plus members who are victims, and there's so many more than that in the city, of course, it's just our group, which did start on the Upper West Side. We have over 50 cyclists and professional cyclists too. And 11 of them were hit and seriously injured. Injuries in our group, some of them combined 43 broken ribs, 3 brain bleeds, a broken hip with hip replacement, 2 broken shoulders, a woman with 5 titanium plates in her head, broken clavicles, broken feet, broken hands, so many knocked unconscious, all have PTSD. And in all cases but one, like I said, the rider fled. This has to be addressed. And the moped issue, we're so glad you agree with. We definitely are for that. We brought that loophole forward and we're proud of that. And we love that you're for that. But e-vehicles, real problem. There's no accountability. There's no accountability by the rider because sometimes they're being incentivized to go faster. And I understand they're just trying to do their job, but you can't ride on the sidewalk. You can't speed. You can't go the wrong way, and you can't run red lights. And having a wider bike lane, which I know we hear or more infrastructure, doesn't make a bike rider go slower. It doesn't make them stop going through a red light. It doesn't all of a sudden magically solve anything. It's just more infrastructure. What we need is accountability. When people change their behavior because they know there'll be a consequence, that's when we'll save lives and mitigate these injuries. Excuse me. We talked about mopeds. Majority are unlicensed. I mentioned the middlemen. We talked about the shops. I won't bring that up, but we need accountability from riders, but city bike as well. You know what Priscilla Loki, city bike rider, got after they found him? A red light ticket. There's no accountability whatsoever. We have many people hit by city bikes. They call city bike and city bike says it's on the rider. That's a problem. We need accountability from delivery apps. Deliveristas are taken advantage of. They're incentivized to go fast. They're not insured, employed, or have to go into any safety training. It absolutely makes no sense. The city isn't taking accountability either. And one of my last points is, it's harder to get legislation passed when reporting is so skewed. So we uncovered the fact, and Alex Boris is working on it for us, that police forms don't have an e-vehicle or a moped box. And how do we know this is a problem? Because all of our victims report to us and show us their lack of police form, or they're wrong, their accident or crash reported incorrectly because there is no category. So they go under motor vehicle, or they don't get reported at all, because there's no protocol that's really seamless across the city. Different precincts do different things. And often if somebody flees the scene, it doesn't get reported. And often if the report comes in 5 days later because the person was in the hospital, it doesn't get reported. So we have a real problem with reporting. The stats for these could not be more wrong. And I want to say that an ER doctor is in our group, and his name is Daniel Murphy. And he is the chief of emergency medicine at St. Barnabas Hospital. And he isn't here tonight, but I spoke to him and he said that we could quote him. He has a lot to say, but here's a couple sentences. We are seeing consistently and daily steady numbers of high acuity injuries, including fatalities from e-bikes, e-vehicles, and moped crashes. Full stop. As far as numbers are concerned, the numbers of injury and the acuity of them are getting worse by the day and are not at all represented in the stats by the DOT. So again, we have opposition who don't think that machines with motors hurling through our streets and crashing into people, maiming and killing them, and diminishing the quality of life for millions should be registered and licensed. And we have to ask why? Because you want them to be able to do those things with no accountability? It just doesn't make sense to us. We're very disappointed that Gail Brewer, my last point, did not sign on to this Bob Holden Bill 0758 for licensing and registration of all e-vehicles, but 32 other council members did. We had a super majority for a couple days. You know, I will say, because this is just a fact, TransAlt wrote them letters and 2 of them took their name off, but we're still at 32, and we believe that we will be able to pass this either at city or state level. But I would like to say, Susan, Simon, I know that you asked me to be here and you are a constituent like myself on the Upper West Side. Was there anything you wanted to add? I know our time's about up.
Your time is up, so very, very quickly, I'll hear like 30 seconds and then we're going to pass the mic.
Okay. And also in questions and answers, but we do ask CB7 to support registration and licensing for all e-vehicles. Bob Holden's Bill 0758. Thank you.
Pretty sure we already did, but okay.
We have passed a resolution to that effect and sent it to our state representatives.
Thank you.
Oilman Siegel is a supporter of it. And I will say something that I always say, whether you're a motorist, a biker, or a user of mass transit, at one point, you're a pedestrian, and pedestrian safety is the utmost important.
And I thank you, but I just have to correct one thing. We so appreciate Brad, but his bill isn't for city bikes too. It's just for commercial. Bob's is for commercial and city bikes. So that's the difference that I was adding in with Priscilla Loki and the city bike tonight, that we're asking for all the e-vehicles, you know, not just the commercial. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We're going to pass the mic first, and then we're going to have, Q&A. I see the hands up. Please put them down because I see that you're all on the same team. That's great. We'll call on folks later, but right now we're going to pass the mic immediately to Carl Mahaney, whom we thank for being with us. Carl, I think you had some slides, or
I have a little slide presentation. I'll just run through. Let me share.
And it's enabled, so you should be all set.
Okay, let's see.
How's
that?
What
looks good.
Okay,
They'll tell
great.
you. It's no, it's actually open plans, but I think
same group.
Well.
Yeah, I can introduce myself if you want.
Yeah, please do, Carl.
Might make it easier. So thanks for the chance to speak tonight. I am hang on a second, I'm not. There we go. So yeah, my name is Carl Mahaney, and I direct Streetopia Upper West Side, which is an initiative of Open Plans. And we are a livable streets advocacy organization working with New Yorkers to create people first public space. We are obviously in the middle of the transportation revolution. It's happening here on the Upper West Side and across the city. And the e-bike that we're discussing tonight is at the forefront of that. Hang on a second. There we go. And this is not just happening in New York or on the Upper West Side. This is a global phenomenon. And the e-bike boom, we think, holds great promise to remake cities for the better in an era of rapid urbanization and the increasingly disruptive effects of climate change. The e-bike can help get us there. The e-bike is a tool, and it's a very effective tool. It provides millions of people with sustainable and equitable mobility options. It improves the livability and health of communities by taking cars off the street. And it offers accessibility and independence to many who otherwise would have limited options for getting around. As David Zipper Researcher and scholar recently put it, e-bikes provide an unprecedented mobility cocktail of affordability, healthfulness, convenience, and fun. In other words, e-bikes are a solution. They are not inherently a problem, especially in dense urban districts like the Upper West Side. But there are very real challenges to integrating a new technology like e-micromobility into our transportation network and more broadly into the cultural and social customs of our shared public realm. Battery safety is obviously at the forefront of a lot of people's mind, and it's vitally important. It's not something I'm really going to address tonight as it's somewhat separate from the issue of public space. So that's where I'll focus tonight, on the effects of e-micromobility on our streets. Pedestrians and other vulnerable street users can often have uncomfortable or feel fearful interactions with micromobility. Things like riding on sidewalks, riding the wrong way, running red lights, riding too fast. These are all very real concerns that need to be addressed. Micromobility users, electric or otherwise, face issues of access and safety in an inadequate bike network, having to share the street and mix with cars and trucks. Where there are bike lanes, those lanes being blocked, and lack of secure bike parking are all impediments to those devices. And then there's the issue that's already been discussed here tonight, the devices that get conflated with e-bikes, namely electric and gas-powered mopeds, which are a wholly different thing with different rules and regulations, as has been discussed. So despite these challenges, we believe e-bikes are a sensible and sustainable solution for the Upper West Side and for the city, and their use should be encouraged and supported. So how might we proactively address the e-bike boom? It starts with safety, ensuring the safety of all street users. And prioritizing, of course, the most vulnerable, which is most often pedestrians, especially our older neighbors, and children. But in the hierarchy of risk, that vulnerable user may also be a micromobility user, electric or otherwise. It's also crucial that we pursue strategies that support and encourage a thriving e-micromobility culture that opens up this sustainable mobility option to an increasingly broad and diverse range of New Yorkers. And we've identified 3 categories to frame our thinking on this topic: infrastructure, education, and regulation. So I'll run through each of those. Infrastructure, the most impactful thing that we can do to ensure safe streets is to allocate more space to micromobility of all kinds, electric and otherwise, and less space to cars and trucks. As it is, pedestrians and cyclists are too often forced to fight over scraps at the margins, creating unsafe conditions and inevitably leading to conflict. Reallocating street space to adequately support micromobility will make everyone safer. And it's completely within the city's control to do this. No legislation is required. Building on the infrastructure piece, once people have what they need to move around safely, we should communicate a culture of sharing streets with one another through targeted education and outreach. And finally, we should use upstream regulation as opposed to arbitrary enforcement to stop dangerous and illegal devices before they make it onto our streets. So let's look closely at the infrastructure piece because it's really the most critical to success. We analyzed the street space on the Upper West Side, and we estimate that there are 99 miles devoted to moving cars and trucks, vehicle travel lane, 99 miles on the Upper West Side, and an estimated 36 miles of street parking, of street spaces devoted to storing cars and trucks, 36 miles of street parking on the Upper West Side. Just 7 miles of the public right-of-way is dedicated to the safe movement of people using micromobility. Looked at another way, nearly 95% of the curb-to-curb street space, the asphalt in the roadbed, is devoted to motor vehicles. And less than 3% is given to safe micromobility infrastructure. These pictures are protected bike lanes. And we did a study last year, or released earlier this year, where we looked at every bike lane on the Upper West Side, and we found, and as those statistics show, the spatial statistics, the status quo is simply inadequate, incomplete, and unsafe for micromobility users. There are over 14,000 deliveries per day on the Upper West Side using that infrastructure that is not supporting them. That's their workplace. And there are over 2.4 million city bike trips. That's as of 2022, the last year we have full statistics, to say nothing of the many more millions who ride their own devices in and through the district every year, tens of thousands a day. So what should be done? First, we should vastly expand the protected bike lane infrastructure on the Upper West Side, including creating faster lanes specifically for e-devices. So those wanting or needing to go a little slower can feel comfortable and aren't competing for space. Every bike lane should be immediately adjacent to a sidewalk whenever possible, to cut down on the urge to ride on sidewalks to get to mid-block destinations. Also, locating bike parking in the roadbed and off of the sidewalk is another incentive to stay off the sidewalk for those mid-block destinations. And something similar is happening in the super sidewalk in Hell's Kitchen, where they've had pretty good success with having the bike parking in the roadbed in that extended pedestrian space. DOT should commit to designing every future bike lane as bidirectional and double wide to accommodate varying speeds, ease of passing, and social cycling. And it will also eliminate wrong way riding. We should add dedicated busways on the Upper West Side, which, in addition to improving the commute for tens of thousands of bus riders, can double as fast e-micromobility lanes along those corridors. And finally, we should create a network of low traffic streets to reduce the presence of motor vehicles, which would greatly increase overall safety for everyone. The density and scale of the Upper West Side make it a perfect fit for these kinds of people first neighborhoods. Next up is education, which is not a substitute for infrastructure and design. There's a tendency, we've talked about this a bit tonight already, there's a tendency to lump all e-micromobility together, often with blunt rhetoric and policy. But e-bikes are not mopeds, and mopeds are not scooters. Any attempts to create new policy and change behavior will hinge on users knowing and following basic rules for safety and care. However, inadequate infrastructure, like we have on the Upper West Side, makes sharing space much more challenging. Knowing not to ride on a sidewalk is one thing. Choosing to do so anyway, carefully, because there's no protected bike lane on the way to your kid's school, is another. Acts of care start with adequate and safe infrastructure, and education efforts should be premised on giving people the tools they need to feel safe in the first place so they can act responsibly in return. And finally, regulation. Ensuring that riders are using safe and legal vehicles begins at the point of sale. We've discussed this tonight. And it was in that resolution. Addressing the issue at its root is preferable to relying on policing, which is proven to be discriminatory and ineffective and would disproportionately affect hardworking Black and brown New Yorkers, many of whom are bringing us those 14,000 daily deliveries. E-micromobility retailers should disclose to buyers at the time of purchase which type of device required registration, and New York City law should be updated to require dealerships to that all vehicles, both mopeds and cars and trucks, are registered and have a license plate before leaving the retailer. Pedal assist and throttle e-bikes going less than 25 miles an hour, we feel, should remain exempt from licensing and registration. Indiscriminate licensing threatens to dampen the transition to this more sustainable mode of transportation and would do nothing to address safety concerns. And as was stated a bit ago, Councilmember Gail Brewer agrees with that and recently weighed in against the blanket e-bike licensing bill that's making its way through the council. And finally, as it relates to delivery workers, app companies should be required to verify that devices used for delivery are legal and properly registered as required by New York state law, or better yet, they should either provide devices directly to delivery workers or financially support delivery workers in purchasing e-bikes or mopeds from a list of approved legal retailers. So those are some of our thoughts on this complex issue. But we believe safe, successful, and sustainable e-micromobility is attainable if we take a care-based approach, if we have comprehensive infrastructure, not the piecemeal infrastructure that we have today, if we thoughtfully communicate what the rules are and a culture of caring for one another, and if we have targeted, effective policy. And if y'all are interested in reading the full e-micromobility policy platform, that's at the top link. And if you're interested in taking a look at our micromobility report for the Upper West Side, looking at riders, their experiences, and the conditions on the street, you can find that at gettingthere.city, the second link. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks very much. .city is a new one for me, so I appreciate learning that too.
You bet.
Okay. So if you would, end the share screen. Thank you so much.
Carl, I have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
You bet.
When you get statistics about how many miles of roads we have devoted to motor vehicles, were you including mass transit buses in those statistics and how important it is for buses to be able to get around?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I'm talking about vehicle travel lanes. I'm not aware of any dedicated bus lanes on the Upper West Side. I could be missing them, but.
But what we do experience is double parked delivery vehicles, contractors, and regular cars double parked, and buses having trouble making any time. Columbus and Amsterdam have some of the slowest buses. However, starting next May, in addition to actually in replacing the ABLE bus camera system, we're going to have ACE bus camera system, which is going to not only be the bus lane, but the adjacent lane as well. So anything blocking that is going to get fined, assuming they have a license plate.
And I make a bigger and bigger assumption. And we do have one dedicated bus lane in this. It's on 81st Street between Columbus and Central Park West. There's
Okay.
one eastbound dedicated lane. We could perhaps use a few more. Okay, I can't see the public, so Max, I'm going to call on you to see if there's anybody from the public.
Sure. The hands that I have up now are Susan
We have
Simon.
somebody in the room. Yeah, I should look behind me. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll call on the person in the room first. Please step up and please come a little closer because I think the microphones will be better able to pick you up. Please tell us who you are and then take a couple of minutes to tell us what you think.
Okay, thank you. This is my first community board, so I'm excited that you're talking about this.
Welcome.
My name is Sophia Ball. I'm actually a transportation planner at the Regional Plan Association.
Sure.
And so I'm a user of e-bikes. And so this is a quite close topic for me. I actually prepared remarks, but it might just be easier if I just respond to what was talked about. I acknowledge the EVSA's concerns, and those videos are awful. And I do agree that the city and delivery apps should do more to facilitate safer streets. But I just want to make sure that we're clear, and Carl alluded to this in his presentation, that I think based on that presentation, we're really conflating mopeds and e-bikes. And I think that, if you did see some what looked like e-bikes in that video, from my understanding, a lot of these retailers are selling e-bikes, but because they're not pedal assist, as you were saying, they're technically not an e-bike. And so I just want to point that out because I agree that a lot of these bikes that look like e-bikes, they're very dangerous and people are very reckless with them. But I just want to clarify that and make sure while we're in this learning stage that we don't conflate the two. And yeah, and I think that once we stop conflating it, we're actually really in agreement because as Carl was saying that also licensing the mopeds is also we're in agreement with that. And yeah, I have some other great things about e-bikes, but I'll just skip that. And I guess I looked at data this afternoon about collisions caused by e-bikes, and it's a 16th of that of what cars do. So I think also that's important to know. I can come next time and look at the data from mopeds as well, in case you're curious about that. But yeah, that might be for next time, but thank you.
Thank you. Now, you're here from Regional Plan Association.
On my own account.
Okay, so that's important for everybody to know, is that,
Yeah.
because a lot of times we all speak, we're members of organizations, but we speak our own minds, and that's good to know. And you're equally welcome whichever way you are, just want to make sure we're clear. Does RPA have a position on any of the laws that we've been talking about, or the bills we've been talking about?
They don't, but that's something that I really want to push for in 2024, and I want to do a report and some research on this, and so hopefully I can come back to you.
Can I make a comment about something?
Yeah.
I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, that if what depicted as e-bikes are not e-bikes because they're not pedals. In fact, the state vehicle and traffic law has a section which defines electrically assisted bicycles, and those bicycles that fall under that definition. The difference being the speeds that they're capable of. They're in fact three categories. There are pedal assisted, and then there are throttle e-bikes in this class 2 and class 3, depending on the speed. But they are in fact considered electric.
Pedal.
No, there are 3 classes. The first class is just informational.
Okay, yeah. So
Pedal
that's good to
assisted.
know, yeah.
I think that
Okay, okay. So, Max, are there any other hands from the public? Thank you.
There are. So there's someone listed as Janet Schroeder who's not. There's Susan Simon, and then there's another member of the public, Rachel Grosso Hodges. Up to you, which where we want to go first.
So, the Janet Schroeder wannabe had his hand up the longest. So,
I sent him my link. I sent him the link. That's why it says, and I apologize. It's Andrew Fine. I'm sorry.
With all of you. So why don't we call them in that order? So the gentleman who's not Janet Schroeder, and then Susan Simon, and then the person that Max named, whose name I now don't have in front of me. Try to keep your remarks to around 2 minutes. I'm not going to run a timer, but that's what we're going for here. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go right ahead.
Okay. And yeah, Andrew Fine. I'm actually residing in Community Ward 8, member of the E-Vehicle Safety Alliance, as one of the founding members, probably the 4th. Just to dispute a couple of these arguments, more bike lanes equals more safety. Nothing could be further from the truth. At this point, during the de Blasio administration, Bill de Blasio built more bike lanes in New York City than any mayor in the history of mankind ever built. And guess what? We're having one of the worst years ever in terms of unfortunate cyclist deaths. Of the deaths, 26 at least that are documented so far, 18 of those are on e-bikes. So absent e-bikes, we're doing okay, but e-bikes are clearly very deadly. And we've had a study by Alex Boris that showed that e-bikes are 19 times more likely to end up in an accident than a conventional bike. The argument that we need more bike lanes is ridiculous, because most of these people do not obey the law in the first place. They're not using the bike lanes, and we have mopeds, motorcycles, and everything else using them as well. So I understand. There's a real question here as to why. Just think, why is there so much resistance from the bike lobby to be accountable? It's not a big ask. If you get hit by an e-bike, like 49 of our 50 members that have been injured by an e-bike or a moped, it's a hit and run. And there's only one way that we can actually track who it is or have a prayer of figuring out who
2
it
minutes.
is. Thank you. That did it. And at the end of the day, it's the poor person that got knocked over and their ribs broken, laying on the sidewalk, who ends up paying for it. We want accountability. It's not a big ask. At the end of the day, you have to look at the bike lobby and who is funding them. And Uber Eats, Lyft, DoorDash, Amazon, they all have large influence, especially on transportation alternatives, but it's an octopus. Let's face it. And this is where the
Okay.
influence is coming from. And why do they want? They don't
Very
want
much.
liability.
Thanks very much. I think I said at the top of this that we're going to talk about the issues and not about each other. And I'm thinking we're getting a little close to that line.
Talking about the organization.
And we do
yes.
have more people raising their hands now than I originally outlined,
Well, and
as you might
there's-
imagine.
All right, so we're going to continue with our line. So Susan Simon, followed by, it was Rachel Grasso, right? It was the next.
Correct,
Okay.
Rachel.
We'll go in that order. And let's keep our ground rules in mind, please. Thank you, folks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Rachel, you're next, but Susan Simon goes first.
Oh,
Thank
my
you.
apologies.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark and Andrew, for bringing together this meeting that we've talked about for a long time. And I'd really like to thank Janet Schroeder and Andrew Fine for their incredible work on this this really troubling problem that we have in our city. I am a member of EVSA, and I'm also the founder of a community organization. And the number one thing I hear from my group is about how unsafe they feel because of the explosion of e-vehicles. And this is something that a lot of us have been talking about and going to our elected leaders about, with thousands of phone calls and thousands of letters. And really, we have gotten nowhere until EVSA came into the picture. And now hopefully we are getting closer to having accountability for the egregious behavior of not all, but a lot of e-vehicle riders. And it's really made our neighborhoods, our sidewalks, a danger zone. And many people are afraid to go out. Senior citizens are concerned when they go out. We have an enormous amount of senior citizens on the Upper West Side. Many of them have been injured, and some maybe missed a moped by 3 inches. So we have to kind of keep this in perspective, because the first job of government is to protect its citizens. And yet we seem to bump up against a big wall that says, well, that's okay on cars. We'll license and register cars, but we won't on bikes that go 30 miles per hour. So I'm glad to see that we're beginning to get somewhere. And I thank you for your involvement, and hope that we can continue to talk to each other to get the regulation we need. Thank you.
Thanks. That's a perfect time to end.
Great.
We're going to
So
go
we
to
have-
Rachel, and then Max, if there are folks from the public,
Yes.
want to get them ready. Thank you.
Sounds
Rachel,
good.
go ahead. Thank you for waiting.
Hi, thank you all so much for allowing me the opportunity to comment on this and provide my expertise. I work as a transportation planner and on safety action plans from Boston to Montana. And I wanted to highlight one element that I really think is important from what we've been chatting about tonight, which is the inadequacy of crash data to help us accurately understand what is happening on our streets. I analyze crash data on a daily basis, and I think that the points made by our presenters are really underscoring an issue in what we can be doing to address how we go about both of our infrastructure and our policy changes and implementation. And so I would really encourage CB7 as you work towards a resolution or advocacy to really consider how we can better utilize our crash forms and encourage the NYPD and any other first responders to make note of when and what type of vehicles are involved in crashes. I also really highly recommend the use of the term crash rather than accident, because an accident implies that there's no fault, and there usually is fault involved, and kind of gets into the victim blaming that we don't really want to use as professionals who care a lot about transportation. I think lastly, I do want to underscore Carl's point that more infrastructure that separates uses and provides space for each type of mobility user is a solution and is a really important part of making our streets safer for all users. I would just like to point out that there are more bicycle crashes happening because there are more people riding bikes than there were 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And so that's not necessarily indicative of there being more dangerous bicycling happening, just that there are more people on bikes and so we're having more crashes, but we can do something to address that by building safer infrastructure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next, who's next?
Sure. We can go. I tried promoting Katina Ellison and Mary Avancho, both. I think Katina's ready first.
Very good. Go right ahead. Thank you. Around 2 minutes, please.
Hi, sure. My name's Katina Ellison, and I run the West 71st Street Block Association. And some of you might know us because we have been vigorously advocating to get the proposed e-bike charging station slated for 71st and Broadway at the Bowtie intersection. We're trying to get that relocated and stopped at this location. And you guys have been great. CB7 was wonderful. We had a record turnout of people, residents very, very opposed to this, and you did do a resolution, and we are very grateful for that. However, we recently learned after a long period of silence and pulling teeth that indeed the station is moving forward at that very dangerous location, which is parkland, landmarked, and even a senior pedestrian zone. Just now, I left your office and came home in a cab. I was crossing from 71st and Broadway over to towards the east side. So I was literally crossing the Bowtie intersection. I could not believe the number of lawless activity, every single kind of bike, e-bike, you name it. We're here tonight. We've started a big coalition of multiple block associations and other groups because we need to ask for your help again, CB7, if you would please consider writing another letter to Parks. Parks is going ahead. They're in the process of a design. And even though perhaps Gail Brewer is finally saying she's opposed, I don't think it's vigorous enough for what we want to see, which is an absolute promise in writing that this site will not be used. People will definitely be hurt. People will be killed. We even oppose this latest thing, pop wheels, these stations, these smaller, I don't know, stations like vending machines where you could swap out your battery. That's fine, but not in the middle of a pedestrian island that provides safety for people, some of whom are frail, elderly, in wheelchairs, in walkers. This is not the right place. And frankly, we're stunned the city is continuing.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Andrew's going to say something, then I am, and then we're going to go to the next person.
Katina, I just want you to know that I've spoken to the MTA about this and the possible obstruction of passengers coming from the M5, the M7, the M11, the M104 bus to get on the subway at the Southern Head House, and they are going to look into it as well.
Wow.
Thanks.
I really
I heard that there were huge art pieces there year after year.
Yeah.
Nobody complained about that.
They don't blow up.
He's not talking about.
They don't block.
So the point I want to add to this, because Katina did ask us to consider an additional resolution and or an additional letter. Obviously, that's something that we would need to coordinate with the chair. What I'll say as a person who used to hold that office is that our colleagues in the Parks Department were the ones who brought forward that resolution.
Yes.
And so it's important to me, and I think to Andrew, that we respect our colleagues and their efforts in terms of anything moving forward would move forward, at least in coordination with them, if not initiated by them. The other thing is that it's been my experience that once you have a really strong piece of advocacy, you should leave it alone. That the only thing we could accomplish, well, let me put it this way. In order for me to want to use this committee's time for a further resolution on the subject, is if we could make a better mousetrap. And right now, I don't know that there's anything that could be said that hasn't been said that we could add to the mix. And you always run the risk when you re-raise an issue of advocacy that the support the second time will not be as robust as the first. And then you actually hurt your advocacy. So I think we all need to be very careful in terms of what it is that we move forward with. That said, now I see a couple of hands around the table. I think Jay had first, Howard, then Andrew, and then we're gonna go back to the public, and then we're gonna
I
wrap
have
this up.
a few questions for the presenters, but I'll hold that. But on the question of sending a letter to the Parks Department or to the mayor of the city, et cetera, that the one of the co-chairs who recently resigned from the board and her companion co-chair drafted and presented a letter to the board chair who refused to give them authorization to send it. So that process was tried and was vetoed by the chair. Whether it's worth another shot or not, it's not up to me.
Well, and it certainly shouldn't come from this committee when it's their work.
I agree.
Okay, so I think it's Howard and then Andrew.
I think one of the frustrations for people who serve as volunteers is they put in all this work and it's just radio silence from the city. I'll say personally, it's very frustrating to me. So I see nothing wrong with reminding the city of our hard work and trying to get them to actually live up to, or at least listen to everything we've done.
And that's perfectly fair. It's just that we're not writing on a clean slate right now. So that's fair. Andrew.
So I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to leave after this, but it's been an interesting conversation. I think both sides on this have a lot of good points and some points that seem more political, whether they're a political organization or not, like so many of these issues. But I just go back to the same thing. I think this is an issue of this overall feeling of disorder around the city that people feel, whether it's the illicit cannabis shop, whether it is the bike issue or vehicles or whatever, however you want to describe, what's going back and forth. You see it when you go into Duane Reade and everything's locked up. And no one wants, or I don't want over policing of any specific population. That's a huge problem. We should never go back to where we were, but we can continue to talk about all of this, but unless there is, actual enforcement, you can pass any law. There's a lot of laws on the books right now, but if you don't enforce it, nothing's going to happen. So to me, this is just part of the much bigger pot of addressing the overall disorder in all of these different areas of the city. And that is a political decision of our political leaders, whether they want to put pressure on, whether it's the police department or an alternate agency to do it. And for various reasons, there just seems to be no enforcement or very little meaningful enforcement to stop any of it. And a lot of these conversations are good intellectual exercises, but at the end of the day, people also get frustrated, like Howard was saying, when you're volunteering, you spend all your time and nothing happens. So I'm sorry I have to go, but thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Even if you
Point of
feel like
information.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's not happening. Yeah.
Point of information, I understand that as it relates to the 71st Street charging station or whatever you call it, there will be a public hearing that's going to be required on that. It's going to be calendared. So I heard through the grapevine. So
I'm not certain it's required, but I think you're right that there's going to be one.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And so my
It's
bike
not a
friend,
Euler.
and so my bike friend, don't yell at me, it's cars too that drive crazy flying through.
Sure.
It's everything that you can point at.
Okay, do we have any more,
Mark, they have to come to us.
We did.
well, they had to have a plan. I'm not sure they have to come to us.
They haven't come yet?
This is not a Euler. So, it's already, it's city land that's gonna be used,
Park property, it'd be like.
It's also
but it's not alienating park property.
No, but it's like renovating a building.
It's also landmark.
That is entirely voluntary on the part of all of the, Riverside Park or Central Park. It is not required by the charter. It's only when you alienate public land do you have to.
Well, the structures in Central Park are covered.
Under the landmark law,
Central
not
Park
the
and-
park law.
Central Park itself is a land.
I understand, but,
Designated.
okay, anybody else from the public?
Sure. So yes, we have Mary Vancho, and then I think that's it. But I'll remind everyone that the meeting does close at 9.
Yeah, I want to be mindful of that, and there might be a couple of comments around the table. So Mary, take it away. Good to see you or not see you, but see your name up there. Please take it away.
Mary, if you're there, just please unmute. Okay, maybe we go to the table. Oh, here she is.
I'm here. Mark, thank you for the introduction, Mark. I certainly appreciate both videos, and thank both people for presenting those videos, because it's very clear that the first video is the way we're living. It's our reality. And the second video is something that sounds like it looks good on paper. It's not a reality to me. And we're living in a city, like Andrew Rigie said, which is unenforcement. We don't have any enforcement. So you can write all the bike laws you want and everything else. I'm baffled that the city is looking at ideas for charging stations instead of looking at how to enforce bike laws. I think they're putting the cart before the horse. And I don't really have the answers here, but I want to feel safe on the street again. And I think we need to work towards that. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, it is now a little after 8:30. I'd like to wrap this in the next 10 or 15 minutes. If there are any comments that around this table want to be had, Jay had a question or two for the presenters, and I see Howard's hand. And then, and then Ken and Doug. Okay, so we need to move with some speed.
Couple of quick questions for Carl. Is Carl still here?
Hoping Carl's still here.
I don't see him. He's waiting.
There he is.
Carl, what is upstream regulation? I'm not familiar with that. You said that we should emphasize upstream regulation rather than enforcement.
Just simply means, sorry, Jay, just simply means to concentrate efforts on stopping the illegal vehicles from reaching the street in the first place, rather than trying to fetch them all once they've gotten there. That's it.
I wasn't familiar with the term. So is it safe to say, I don't think you're saying that you don't believe in enforcement of the traffic laws, am I correct? Or do you have some anathema towards them?
No, of course, enforcement is important. Enforcement is lacking in many parts of our transportation system right now. We did a report on the Getting There report on bike lanes, and we found that 50% or so of the non-protected bike lanes were obstructed by vehicles. So that's another place where enforcement would be helpful. Totally recognize that enforcement is a piece of the pie. If you're enforcing something, though, you've failed somewhere in your infrastructure, and you've failed in your sort of acculturation and your education piece. Enforcement is the last thing you want to rely on.
It's also generally in response to some human nature.
To some, I didn't catch that. Sorry. To some what?
To human nature. You're always going to have people violating law.
Of course. That's why good design, whether it's street design or app design or home design, can nudge people toward behavior that is in their best interest and the best interest of their community.
The other thing is, I think you said that all bike lanes should be two-way bike lanes. Do you believe that also for one-way streets and avenues like Amsterdam and Columbus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the DOT should absolutely pilot a two-way bike lane. The wrong way riding is, you will not enforce your way out of the wrong way riding. The delivery workers are, they're on the clock. And if they go a block out of their way, they're losing money. It's completely irrational to, on a bicycle, to have to go one long block out of the way to go 6 blocks up. It doesn't make sense. I think a pilot is long overdue for two-way bike lanes. Absolutely. We might find that it's a bad idea, but we won't know until we study it.
My comment on that is that crossing a street with a bike lane is often very problematical. And to not know what direction the bike may be coming from, especially if you're not particularly 100% within your faculties when you do so, I think is a disaster, would be a disaster waiting to happen. And my final observation is, and I've heard this before, that requiring registration of e-bikes would dampen their use. Registering an e-bike currently under the State Department of Motor Vehicles would probably cost anywhere from $30 to $50 for a 2-year registration. And I think, frankly, it's frivolous to say that when people are spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for an e-bike, that amount of money would somehow be a disincentive to purchasing that e-bike.
Thank you. We're going to go next to Howard, then Ken, then Doug. And then I see that Steve Anderson has his hand up. So Steve, you get the last word. Let's go.
There are two approaches to improving a street: carrot and stick. That's it. And I think both work. I think both presenters had good points. Let's talk about the stick. The police are just not wielding it, and that's a problem. I use City Bike, so that's not a surprise to anyone, but I never use the e-bikes. I always use the ones with the pedal. I had someone on a motorized unicycle coming at me at, I don't know, 25 miles an hour while texting today. Yes. Oh. Okay. So that's completely unacceptable by anyone's standards. So the point is that, yes, we could call for enforcement, but it doesn't seem to happen. But yet we should not stop calling for enforcement. That's what brings us to the carrot. If you had dedicated spaces for people to go, if people go on the sidewalk, and I will full disclosure here, occasionally I have to when there is a really unsafe condition in the streets. So to the extent you make the streets safer, you will encourage, and again, the perfect should not be the enemy of the good. If there is a safe and easy place to ride in the street for people to ride, they are much less likely, it's undeniable, that they'll be on the sidewalk. So it's a combination of the two, and I think anyone who says it's one or the other is not being realistic, and that's my point.
Thanks, Howard. Ken's next, then Doug, and then we hear from Steve Anderson, and then we're going to say thank you and good night.
Good night. Well, just a few things. If we could wait, looking at that video that EVSA showed, we could wave a magic wand and my resolution got rid of all the illegal mopeds on the streets and the bad actors. They showed it. It didn't have much of a video. And I'm not even sure that EVSA would even exist without that. So it's and to other after that, where you have our city bike riders on pedal assist city bikes, and they actually caught the one who killed that one and charged with a red light violation. So that's what you get in a car if you hit somebody. That's about all you're going to get. They're asking for accountability. There is no accountability under the contract. For 98% of the carnage on the streets, which is caused by driving. there's no accountability. In terms of the impediment, Jay, to, and how it's going to dampen and actually stop if we have a registration licensing law for e-bikes. It's really targeting delivery vehicles, because that's really what we're talking about. They're the main outside of the moped. They're the ones who are driving. Look what happens when you have a helmet in a city. Like Melbourne, Australia, tried a helmet for their bike share program. And their bike share program failed because they had that helmet. So just requiring something simple like a helmet that you can pick up for $20, that discourages people from riding the mode of transportation. But we should be advocating for people, and we should make it as easy as possible for people to go and use electrified small micro mobility. That's ultimately where we're having massive.
Thanks, Ken.
For the record.
No.
He was addressing a specific thing.
It's too bad. We have only half. I'm sorry. Doug is next.
Look,
seriously.
I'm really happy that
I gotta be done by 9.
I'm happy that both groups presented, and I appreciated the content of both groups. And I appreciate what Howard just said about the carrot and the stick. I'd like to see more of both. It just occurred to me while we were talking, could you imagine for a moment if the delivery workers were employees and in the course of their riding, they got injured and workman's compensation insurance had to kick in? That it hit people in their pocketbook. People are motivated by enforcement, whether you like it or not. And I agree, infrastructure is also important. And the upstreaming, I don't disagree with any of that, but I do not see enforcement. And, for a long time, a lot of us, and I'm just going to say the collective us, were denying what everybody is seeing in the street. And I think it's contemptuous that people were saying it's not as bad. First of all, the data is not caught up because there's so much of this is unreported. I am now your new public safety coordinator at CB7, and I attend a lot of police community council meetings. And a commanding officer of the 20th precinct just said recently that the most brought up subject at every precinct citywide is e-bike safety and other things. But that is a constant issue and there's not a lot being done about it.
Data, that's
So
please.
it is, but perception is reality and people are terrified. So I don't want to punish any one group of people, but the reality is that something has to be done. By the way, just saying an aside, I think we should also support Coughlin Siegel's bill about increasing the penalties and accountability for hit and run to make it equivalent to a motor vehicle. And I hope that gets passed, and I think that we should back it personally. In any case, I just do think that, when you think about motor vehicles, and people run a red light, or they don't yield to a pedestrian, or they're speeding, I like to think that good-minded people are concerned about their safety, about not killing themselves or others, but they're also very concerned about getting points on their license, which increases their insurance premiums. And unfortunately, that's another stick. I'd like to see more enforcement, but I'm all for the carrots too. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. And so we're gonna have our last word from Steve Anderson. Thank you for joining us, Steve. And and that's right, TripNet. So go right ahead.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Dear neighbors, we all know that the idea of this hub at West 71st Street is simply nuts. We know it's a dangerous, crazy idea. And of course, if letters aren't wise moves to resend, and that isn't the answer, we need you, CB7. We need you, Transportation Committee. We need you, Parks Committee, to figure out how we as a community can move forward. Let's look for places that aren't nuts for something like this. It's not about for or against, it's about where. And we need to come together as a community and look for places where something that we all believe is the right thing can be the right place. But we can't just go along with something that we all know is simply crazy to do, is dangerous. We want to do the right thing in the right place. And what's been identified is simply the wrong place. And you know that, and we know that, so let's fix it. Please help us. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to share this view.
Thanks very much, and we're just under the wire. So we're going to say thank you very much to our presenters, to Carl and to Janet and EVSA. Thank you both for being. This is, I'm sure, a topic that's going to come back in some form or another. For tonight, this is where we're going to call it. We thank the folks around the table, and we especially thank our friends from Harris Studios for sticking with us. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Have a great